It's true that I can start from the beginning, although I am relatively new in my job as director of this directorate, because as you rightly pointed out, the Commission, I think, has reacted very quickly and very swiftly, mainly to the recommendations of the high-level group, which was set up in 2017 and which worked very hard all during the year on these important matters. And certainly after the recommendations of the group were delivered, the Commission started to put this very important file very high on its policy agenda. It all started as a small work stream of a much broader project, which is the Capital Markets Union project, which is an important, very broad project which started with the Juncker Commission and which is still being implemented at this stage and which will probably take us busy for the new mandate. We hope so, and we will see, without committing, of course, the new commissioners, but we believe that this should be the case. Within this framework, with this big project, which is about basically identifying new sources of financing for businesses, alternative to the traditional bank lending, and designing, shaping, developing those new sources of financing. Within this project, one little aspect was also to explore ways on how to make investment more sustainable. And the first step was precisely to create this high-level group, which, as I said, worked very hard and very intensively for 1 year, and which delivered then a number of extremely interesting and concrete recommendations at the end of 2017. At that moment, certainly taking up also a clear momentum which was being created or built around us, the Commission decided to put this project very high on its political agenda. It decided basically consciously to lead on the implementation of the Paris agreements. In a global situation which saw at that time the Americans a little bit withdrawing and the Chinese jumping ahead in this area, we thought that it was very appropriate for us as EU to take a firm and clear position, and supported by the very proactive positioning of various heads of states and government, first of all, Macron, who came here on the 22nd of March to basically comment on, applaud our action plan after having invited Vice President Dombrovskis at this one-day Planet Day in Paris in December last year, under, let's say, with the support of the political community. We felt that we had to deliver quickly tangible results and make concrete proposals very quickly. And that's what we did, as I said, with the action plan launched in March this year. So only a few weeks after having received the recommendations of the high-level group, an action plan which contains and announces our strategy in this area, which was only the beginning, which basically showed the roadmap that we intend to follow for the future, and which has been followed a few weeks later by the first concrete proposals. And these are the package which was published last week or 2 weeks ago, the 24th of May. So I think that the Commission has demonstrated that an area which, as I said, was considered firstly an area to explore has now become one of the top priorities of our agenda. Certainly, I can confirm that it is amongst the top priorities of Vice President Dombrovskis, who has exposed himself personally in all the possible fora showing how committed he is, and also on behalf of the college, to achieving, to contributing to achieve the objectives set up in Paris. How? By putting, as someone much more important than me said, by trying to put private money at the service of the planet. So in a way, I mean, the magic figure is now very well known, the 180 billion that we need per year in the next 2 or 3 decades in order to achieve the 2 degrees objective, the famous 2 degrees objective, is not money that can come from the public sector alone. The public sector cannot make it. We need private money to be channeled towards this objective. How we have decided to achieve this objective in the traditional way that the Commission pursues, not by imposing behaviors, not by imposing quotas, but by making proposals aimed at creating the conditions for this change of culture to occur. And this is very important because we are not going at the moment to propose, and what we have tabled as proposals on the 24th of May does not impose any specific target, but imposes a number of actions which are required in order to contribute to this change of culture. First of all, this package, I'm going to present it very briefly now, and certainly there will be questions about it. It's made of basically of 3 pillars. One pillar is the starting point, the famous taxonomy. So we propose to create an European classification of what is green and what is not green, in a nutshell. There are 6 sub-objectives, we can go into details, but basically the first step is to agree on what we consider green and what we do not consider green, because if we want to draw concrete conclusions on the color that we have to put on an investment, and we will come to that certainly when we will talk about green supporting factor or brown penalizing factors or issues like that. If we have to draw concrete conclusions from that, we first have to be sure that we all agree and that there is legal certainty on what is green and what is not. So the first step is to create a European taxonomy, and we were going to start, of course, with environmental aspects. This taxonomy will develop. We are creating basically now a governance which will set up a process aimed at creating taxonomy first in the field of environment, and then in the future to extend this also to social and governance issues. In order to do so, we have launched, we are creating a group of experts which will basically ensure the link between the public and the private sector. So basically, there is a lot which has been done already in the area of taxonomy. There are a lot of taxonomies which have been developed in the private sector. We want, of course, build on those and use whatever is usable that has been created up until now, and based on this, reach European taxonomy and European classification, which will be then used for the purposes that we will see later. In parallel, so basically this is a regulation that we are proposing, empowering the Commission, when it will be approved, to adopt the taxonomies which will be developed in parallel by the working group, which will start work as soon as possible, and probably in the coming weeks. The second pillar of this package is in the area of fiduciary duties, basically institutional investors, asset managers, subject to all the rules that we have at European level, UCITS, AFMD, and all the rest. They do not always correctly integrate environmental, social, and governance, so this area is extended to ESG in general, considerations into account when they set up their investment strategies. We, a little bit like we did in the area of non-financial reporting for corporates, which Olivier has mentioned as well. We want to push investors to disclose how they take into account those considerations when deciding their investments. And again, we believe that by doing so, without obliging them to do so, but by simply asking them to reflect on how they do so and to disclose how they do so, we believe that this change of culture will slowly happen, or even quicker than quickly happen, like it is going to happen and is happening in the area of corporates. So the third pillar is in the area of benchmarks. Again, benchmarks are the reference for a number of investments, and a number of environmental benchmarks have been developed here and there. Here again, we would like to basically impose a number of common rules for disclosure, and in particular, an harmonized methodology, which will be initially focused on low carbon benchmarks, and then will develop also in the other forms and other aspects until possibly in the future social. Here again, we would like to create basically a European benchmark on the basis of which then everything will be possible, labels and things like that. So these are the first concrete steps that we are following. As I said, we count a lot on the work of the experts which will be selected in the working groups, on the member state working groups which will be created to follow this work as well. But of course, we count on everyone. We count even on people, individuals, companies, associations which have not been selected in the group because there's no room for everyone, but there's an interest from a lot of sides, and so I keep on repeating what I always say, that regardless the participation or not in the group, the channel of communication in this particularly interesting and important file is always open, and I repeat it all the time that I have the occasion to speak publicly. This is a project where the contribution of everyone is required. Of course, I'm not going to repeat or announce or anticipate with what Molly is going to tell us when she will be here. The Parliament is extremely supportive. You may have noticed the report that Molly has produced a few days ago, which is fully supportive in the area and fully supportive of the work proposed by the Commission. There are differences on the instruments, on the tools. I have the impression that the Parliament prefers rather the avenue of brown penalizing factors rather than one of green supporting factors, be it in the area of capital requirements of banks or other areas. But I mean, what counts and what matters is that we, with the Parliament, but I believe also with the industry, and this I can say it on the basis of my personal experience, we all share the same objective, the same commitment, and I think that we need everyone's effort to achieve it. Thank you very much.